It is nice to have an opportunity to co-create in this way. Have you been thinking about what you want from this conversation? What you want to contribute in terms of your perspective? What you want to receive in terms of your asking and your ability to allow your reception of it? Proximity is an important thing to understand, isn't it? You understand it in terms of what you are capable of seeing with your eyes, with what you call your naked eye. How far can you see, and with how much detail can you see? How far can you hear? What's the distance? But even beyond the physics of your time and space, which helps you to measure and understand and calibrate distance and space and motion forward and really all expansion or all evolution. There is also this vibrational proximity. That's the kind of tuning proximity. In other words, you can't set your radio dial on 101 FM or AM and listen to something that's being broadcast on something on another number or even another frequency. Those frequencies have to match up, don't they? And so when we focus on you, we know that there's a lot going on in your world, in your personal world, in your collective world, in your ever-changing world, in you ever-changing in your ever-changing world. So your proximity to ideas, which are thoughts, which are vibrations, your proximity to everything is always in flux, isn't it? So how do you find your way? How do you keep from losing your mind? Well, humans, in a real desire to have some stability or some security, you want to hold to what is. We understand that. But in the process of that, sometimes you limit your ability. You hinder your proximity to things that you want. In other words, sometimes you have a desire for something that is outside your available proximity. And by that we mean your beliefs don't support your new desire. Your beliefs are too far vibrationally apart from your desire. But if your desire, which is tended by your inner being, if your desire is an upper half of the emotional scale desire, in other words, you want it for all of those good feeling reasons, that desire will win out. So then the question becomes, how long is it going to take you to find the vibrational equivalency, or the vibrational harmony, or the vibrational atmosphere, the vibrational proximity to your desires? When you awaken after having dreamed during your sleep, and sometimes you say, I know I dreamed, I just cannot remember what it was about. And then, as your morning unfolds, you remember a little piece of it. You catch a little piece of the tail of that dream. And as you focus there, having accomplished that proximity, often then more and more of what you dreamed will unfold. You will vibrationally tap in to the frequency of it, and you will have the experience that you call recollection. We don't call it recollection or memory. We call it vibrational proximity. You got within the range of it and you picked up the signal. But there is definitely a theme that is coming from so many of you who are students of this work. And the theme, in very general terms, we can sum up in a few sentences. It goes like this. Abraham, I've been doing this for a while. I feel better and better and better. A lot of conversation like that. In fact, many say, I feel the best I've ever felt, but there are still things that I desire that I can't see unfolding yet. But the theme is something like, I want to understand this because there are these specific things that I am not yet experiencing in terms of manifestation. You may very well come away from this conversation today with some new clarity about why some things you want seem out of reach, and why some things you don't want are so within reach that you can't get rid of them. You want them to go away. Unwanted things won't go, and wanted things won't come. Why is that? And the answer, if your quest for security and stability is stronger than your appreciation for your expansion and adventure, then you may be one who clings to beliefs because of the comfort of the stability, a little insecure to go to a new place. Now, why would that be? Well, that's because through what you want to call the trial and error, there isn't any error ever of your life experience, you did try some things that didn't turn out well for you. You jumped too soon, or you leaped too far, or you trusted too much, or the way that you want to say it. But we want to say to you, none of that applies to your new understanding, because your new understanding is one of maintaining your vibrational alignment with who you really are, to your own inner being, those being one and the same thing when we say them that way. Who you really are is the combination of the non-physical you and the physical you. But who you really are from the non-physical standpoint is always pure positive energy. That inner being you never pushes against anything. But that physical you often does. Because you, in a very flawed premise sort of way, have come to believe that you can push away from you the things that you do not want. While that is never true. Because whatever you give your attention to, you call to you. And so, most of the conversation that we want to have with you today about proximity has to do with your ability to focus. But even more, it has to do with your willingness to care about how you feel as you focus. And so, in very blunt terms, you could say, we're going to say, that it has to do with your deliberate thought or your thinking by default. They're different. They're opposing those two concepts. Deliberate thought or thinking by default. Deliberate thought means you're deliberately choosing a thought because you care of its vibrational proximity to the things that you want. And even more important and easier, you care about how you feel. Most humans are we love you so much, sloppy thinkers. And by that we mean, you think about what's around you. You think about what's loudest. You think, most of you, we love you so much, but you do this thing that does not serve you. You are defensive in your stance. Oh, even in a conversation with anyone, even in a conversation with someone you love very much, very often as they begin to speak things that put you on edge, you feel defensive because you're not wanting to be dragged in to a further and further conversation that is uncomfortable to you. That defensive stance does not serve you. And it stems from a premise that isn't accurate. Your defensive stance stems from a flawed premise. And that flawed premise is, I don't create my own reality. That flawed premise is, the law of attraction isn't real or doesn't exist or doesn't work for me. But the biggest flawed premise of all is, I am not deserving of the good that I want to flow into my experience. Another flawed premise, there's only so much good to go around, and only the goodest of the good are worthy of getting it. Nothing could be further from the way this universe is set up. There is plenty to go around. In fact, it expands exponentially, completely commensurate with the desires that you produce. Another flawed premise is that in my defensive stance, I must defend against unwanted things. And the biggest flaw in that premise is a misunderstanding that it is only attraction, 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 attraction. No one else is doing anything to you. No one else is keeping anything else from you. But your defensive stance is a big part, as you interact with the world around you, of why or how you shoot your own self in your own foot, how you deprive yourself of wanted things as you feel unnecessarily competitive. There is no competition. Unnecessarily deprived. You're the only one who can deprive yourself. Unnecessarily not understood when your inner being understands you at all times. Everything unwanted is because of misunderstandings that you've gathered up along your physical trail that most others support in your collective belief of not enoughness, of not enough worthiness, not enough ability or right to receive, not enough of something. Every time you want to say, someone makes me feel defensive, we would say, every time you feel defensive. You want to say, every time I'm made to feel defensive. And the reason you put it in those terms while we put it in the other terms is because you feel like they made you feel that way because you didn't feel that way before they did whatever they did. But that defensive stance is, friends, we really want you to hear it. It is the predominant attitude that you perpetuate because you're not paying attention that gives you the most trouble in your life experience. Because every time you defend against something, guess what your point of attraction is? Since there's no exclusion, since there's no pushing away, there's only calling to you what you give your attention to. Every time you feel defensive, you're just asking for more. As you are in relationships, so many of you wrote letters. And your words were something like this: I am with the most wonderful partner, wonderful in these ways and these ways and these ways. But. And many of those ended in, I think I just want to leave. I think I just want to run away. I think I want to end this relationship of 15 years or 20 years or however long. I want to run away. And we want you to understand that that attitude of feeling like you want to run away is really about wanting to run toward freedom of non-resistance. You want to run away from knee-jerk responses of defensiveness. You want to run away from opinionated people who suck up all the air in the room. You want to run away from misguided people who spew their misfacts, their lack of true evidence. And we want to say to you, friends, you're not ever going to sort that out. You don't get to decide what is right or wrong for anyone else, what is true or false for anyone else. You're just calibrating to your own inner being, who will help you to feel your proximity to the perspectives that throughout all of your existence you've been creating. We want to call your attention to these very important platforms of understanding. You are more than you see in this physical body. You came into this body as an extension of non-physical energy, of non-physical source energy. We refer to that non-physical source energy part of you as your inner being. Your inner being. That non-physical part of you is aware of you in every moment of your consciousness. That inner being part of you is this long-term you. That's the part of you who is completely immersed and hooked in to source energy, who is love, not hate, who is clarity, not confusion, who is passionate about life, about your life. You can tell your proximity to that non-physical part of you, of which you will always be a part. You cannot separate yourself from that. You can know your proximity to that vibrational frequency by the emotions that you feel. We have, in our observation of you as source energy, watching extensions of source energy, we have witnessed you and we have understood you. We continually understand you. And we have presented to you an emotional guidance scale with 22 stops along the way, all the way from full immersion or absolute perfection in proximity to your inner being. That's up at number 1. It feels like love and appreciation and all that good feeling stuff. All the way to further and further and further away proximity at the bottom half of the emotional guidance scale. Fear, insecurity, and some of everything else in between. There is a point on this emotional guidance scale where the way you feel moves from tension to ease, from feeling good to feeling bad. And the degrees of it get better and better as you move upward on the scale and feel worse and worse as you move downward on the scale. Your emotional guidance scale has a tipping point that it would be ever so helpful for you to become acquainted with. You can tell when you tip from discord into accord, from disharmony into harmony. You can feel the proximity of you allowing the fullness of who you are. When we say to you, when you allow yourself to be who you really are, we mean upper half of the scale, good feeling being. That's who your inner being always is.